We are going to start out today with my lovely colleague, Simon Whitehouse. I'm going to add here. We're talking about someone you may have heard of once or twice, a guy called William Shakespeare. There we go. Hello, Simon.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. What a lovely week.
Looking very summery, I might say.
Sorry?
You're looking very summery.
Yes, I sort of thought, oh, well, sleeves? No, who needs sleeves? It's practically summer. So yeah. Oh, we've got my friend Lauren in, and now Lauren runs a company called Shakespeare Out Loud, and it's a fabulous free thing where once a month, I think, Lauren, is that right? They get together and basically read Shakespeare together, and it's phenomenal. And of course, it's tricky at the minute. I don't know I think Lauren's doing some stuff online at the moment, but check it out, Shakespeare Out Loud. It's really fun. So, Simon, thank you for joining us again. We had you on for Dickens, and we had you on for Historic Theatres a couple of days ago. So you are my theatre guru because you know everything there is to know. And Shakespeare's someone that you guide an awful lot, don't you?
Yes, I do. I guess I first sort of fell in love with Shakespeare when I was a child. And I'm sure lots of people have the same memories of being taken to a play at the theatre. I went to Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare
you went into the bit at the big club. Wow.
With my school, and we saw this wonderful production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I just remember being transported by this world of, sort of fairies and, lovers, and it was just fantastic.
Wonderful.
So that's how I got hooked.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, fantastic. Now we should say that when we were chatting about how to kind of, and thank you for stepping in last minute because I wasn't planning to do one today, but I thought, who do I go to who knows this stuff? And that was Simon. When we were talking about what to do about Shakespeare, we kind of thought there's, so Shakespeare Out Loud are doing readings online if anyone wants to join them at Shakespeare Out Loud. So there you go. So get stuck in there. We were kind of saying, what do we do Shakespeare-wise? Do we kind of do the obvious stuff that everybody knows? And we thought so many people know so much stuff about Shakespeare that why don't we talk a little bit about some of the slightly kind of mystery elements to Shakespeare's life. And we thought we'd start out at the very beginning with, it's a very good place to start apparently, with his birth, because even his birth is a slight mystery.
That's right. And yes, in fact, you've brought up that portrait there, which is one of, three main images of Shakespeare that we really are familiar with. And it's interesting in a way that actually the whole of Shakespeare's life is a mystery, and even what he looked like is a mystery. Yeah. This portrait is called the Chandos Portrait, which is in the National Portrait Gallery, and we think that this is the most likely or the most accurate image of Shakespeare that we have, and possibly, for all sorts of various reasons.
Possibly the only one that we have that is actually of him as well. It's sort of a little bit, not quite able to put your finger on it, but this is, if any of them are, this is the one.
Yeah, we still don't know for absolute sure, but lots of images have been taken from this image. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit about his beginnings, and of course, on the 23rd of April, Shakespeare would have been 456 years old.
Quite an age.
This year, yeah, exactly. Now, we say that he was born on or around the 23rd of April. 1564, but we don't know that for sure.
No,
because births were not recorded in the 16th century. And you've just brought up, in fact, his a copy there of the baptismal register from Stratford-upon-Avon. Yes. So the baptism was recorded on the 26th of April. So that would be tomorrow. But normally, children were baptised within 3 days of birth, because if you weren't baptized within 3 days, infant mortality was high, and if you weren't baptized, you were going to go straight to hell. Yeah. So we made an educated guess that it was the 23rd of April.
Yeah, it's kind of a of the fact, isn't it, really? Which means that if he is born the 23rd of April, he's born on St George's Day, which is the patron saint of England. So that is for the greatest British writer, it's quite an auspicious date.
That's right, a very auspicious day. And what is nice is we do know absolutely that 52 years later, on the 23rd of April in 1616, he died.
Yes.
So there's this bookend, and his death is also listed in that same register.
Yeah, I don't have a picture of that, unfortunately. But you can see here the line that I've highlighted, and it says Guillermus Filius Johannes Shakespeare. So it's William, the son of John Shakespeare. So Shakespeare's just there. And you might notice as well that it's not necessarily the spelling that we know, Shakespeare, because there were a variety of different ways that he spelled his name, because back then you didn't kind of have a standardized way of spelling a whole variety of different things, including your own name.
That's right. In fact, every single record we have of Shakespeare's name in his signature, every spelling is different.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And by the way, and not one of them is the way that we spell it today.
No. So so
it's like Shakespeare or Shakespeare or Shakespeare, but not the way we spell it today.
Yeah, we just gone with our own thing. We've gone on from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, his birthday was theoretically 2 days ago, and one of the reasons that we, when we kind of had this day to fill today, I was going to do it next week, but we sort of thought, well, this is the weekend. It's the weekend closest to his birthday that they do a huge celebration, don't they, in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is where he was born, where he lived not all, but the majority of his life, and where he's buried. And that would have been today. That's right. So yes, this is an image of the Stratford sort of Shakespeare Birthday Festival, which, as you say, takes place would be taking place today, and it goes all the way back to the late 19th century, when the headmaster of the King's New Grammar School, which is the school that we believe Shakespeare attended as a child, and that's a lovely view there of the interior. That's the schoolroom. And in fact, the boys of the same school in Stratford-upon-Avon have their lessons in that room every morning. It is incredible. And you can visit it at certain times when they're not using it, can't you, as well, which is lovely.
That's right. So up until 11 a.m, they have their lessons in there. And from 11 a.m. onwards, you can visit and you can actually have a sort of Shakespeare school experience with an actor playing a Latin teacher. Yeah. It's great fun. So actually what the boys do is they normally lead the procession through the town. They end at Holy Trinity Church, which is where Shakespeare is buried, and they lay usually a wreath of flowers, including rosemary. And rosemary is very significant as a herb because it's mentioned in Hamlet, and Ophelia, Hamlet's girlfriend, says, "Rosemary, that's for remembrance." Aww. So rosemary is always associated with remembering Shakespeare. Yeah. That's
so lovely. That's so nice. And as we should say, he is buried in Stratford-upon-Avon. This is his tomb right here. And then he's got family members around him. He's got his wife to one side. He's got brothers and sisters-in-law and things like that, and children around there as well. So the whole lot of them are there. And on his grave, now this is when we go to Westminster Abbey, which we do a lot, we talk about Shakespeare there because there is a fabulous monument to him there. And you would kind of think in Poets' Corner would be the place that Shakespeare would be buried. And they did want to, but we are very superstitious. I can't say it. We have superstitions. And this is what is written on Shakespeare's grave. And this is the reason for why they didn't actually move his body, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. It's wonderful, isn't it? Yes. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust in closed hair. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones.
So we thought better.
Wonderful stuff. So there's a really great story connected to this. Again, in sort of about 1890, there was a newspaper article which suggested that a local doctor had been responsible for removing Shakespeare's skull from his burial site.
Yeah.
To study it, because in the 19th century, there was this big fashion for phrenology, which was where you studied the shape and the contours of the human skull, and you could deduce a person's sort of personality from it. So the idea was that they were hoping to try and work out why Shakespeare was such a genius from the bumps on his head.
Brilliant. And they did scan the tomb a couple of years ago, didn't they? And they realised that was true, that the head was missing.
Well, yeah, they did. That's right. They did a scan of the grave, and they discovered that at the head end of the grave there is some kind of brick structure there, and it suggested also that at some point the soil has been disturbed and resettled. So something dodgy has gone on
Yeah.
in the grave at some point. Now, we can't definitively say that his skull has been removed, although a skull was found in a nearby church about 15 miles away, which they did think was Shakespeare's, but in fact the same team did a study on that skull, and it turns out it's not Shakespeare, it's a 70-year-old woman. And they also discovered that, using this sort of radar technology, that the body that is under Shakespeare's grave is wrapped in a shroud, and
Right.
it's about 3 feet deep.
Ah.
So we do know a little bit more about what's under there. We used to think the whole family was in a big stone vault altogether, but that's not true. They're all buried separately in very simple plain shrouds.
Oh gosh! Wow.
So it's still a mystery. It's still a bit of a mystery, yeah.
You had to know that a bit, actually. So we should move on to his some of the mysteries around his life. And he got married, didn't he, to Anne Hathaway? Here she is. No, wait, that's the wrong one. There she is.
There she is. Yes, that's.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. This is Anne Hathaway, and there was quite a big age difference between the two. She was quite significantly older than him, wasn't she? Well, not by today's standards, by the standards back then, she was.
Yeah, she'd be a cougar today, wouldn't she?
She would be a cougar,
yeah. Yeah. So they married when Shakespeare was 18 years old and Anne Hathaway was 26 years old. They got married in November 1582, and during that time, marriages didn't normally take place because it was Advent leading up until Christmas time. But they had to pay quite a lot of money to get a special license to get married. And I'm sure people probably worked out by now why they had to get married.
Yes, there was
Hathaway,
a
yeah.
Yes.
She was with child.
She was already with child. And of course that was, having children out of wedlock was really not the done thing. But back in that period of time, it was something to do, they weren't quite aware that pregnancies were usually 9 months. So you could kind of make, fudge it a little bit, couldn't you?
That's right, yeah. So after they got married, their first of 3 children, Susanna, was born 6 months later. Yeah. Yes, it's and it's also what's interesting is that Shakespeare was young to get married, because normally you would get married at 21 as a man, because you would have completed your apprenticeship. So that tells us that Shakespeare, although he went to school, he didn't complete an apprenticeship.
Yeah. And then there's a whole big section in Shakespeare's life where we don't really know too much about him. He goes off the radar a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, so after the birth of his 3 children, so 1583 is the first child, 1585 they give birth to twins, Anne Hathaway gives birth to twins, Judith and Hamlet. And for the next 7 years, Shakespeare completely disappears from the record, and we refer to it in the sort of Shakespeare mythology as the lost years of Shakespeare. Yeah. And there's all kinds of theories. One of the theories is that he ended up going up to Lancashire and perhaps getting a job as a school teacher, possibly with a very large, old Roman Catholic family.
Evidence for that? Or any
there is some evidence. There is somebody called a man called Shake Shaft is listed in the records of this Catholic family up in Lancashire. Okay. What's also interesting about that is that they also regularly had a troupe of actors that would come and perform in the Great Hall of their house in Lancashire.
Right.
And people have pieced together the idea that maybe this same person, Shake Shaft, ended up joining this group of actors and then ended up in London as part of this acting company by 1592.
Which would make sense, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah.
But there are some other theories that he was involved in some slightly dodgier kind of dealings and yeah.
Yeah, there was a theory that he'd been involved in illegal poaching in the grounds of a nearby manor house called Charlcote, which you can still visit today in Warwickshire, the county in which Stratford's located. But also now Shakespeare's father, John Shakespeare, who was a very prominent local councillor. In fact, he was the mayor of Stratford-upon-Avon. He was also involved in some dodgy business dealings, specifically illegal wool trading. So he was known as a brogger.
A great word, isn't it?
Not a blogger, but a brogger. And there's a theory now that maybe he'd sent young Will down to London in the late 1580s to try and set him up in the wool trade. Don't forget that wool, of course, was the biggest export from England, of course, across to the continent.
Especially in the area where he grew up as well, in that area and the kind of Cotswolds just below. Very, very big in the wool industry.
That's right. And of course, if you go to Stratford today and the Cotswolds, you can see all these wonderful, sheep today still. Yeah. Same sheep, same breed of sheep.
But whatever happens, he turns up in London at the end of this period that we don't know much about. And so his family's still up in Stratford, as we understand it. And he sort of turns up in London and sets about in the theatre industry down there. And
that's right, yeah.
This is the picture of his first theatre, the Curtain Theatre, which is in the East End of London. It's not there any longer, although they're excavating the foundations of it currently. But the Curtain Theatre was an interesting one because it was... So within London at that time, you had the City of London that we've spoken about before. Remember that peach that we've talked about with the kernel and then the fruit? So the kernel in the middle, and they had very strict rules on what was and wasn't allowed. And one thing that wasn't allowed was theatres, because they were seen, they're not like today where you would turn up and, sit quietly and applaud. Oh, I thought his Lear was marvellous. They were quite sort of rambunctious and a little bit, scruffy and noisy, and people would be drinking. And the City of London didn't want anything to do with that. So theatres were outside of the walls, and the Curtain Theatre is just outside of those constrictions of the City of London.
That's right, yes. So in fact, the Curtain Theatre, which is pictured here, was the second purpose-built theatre ever to be built in London. It opened in 1577. And the year before that, in 1576, the very first theatre, which very imaginatively was called The Theatre, was built just up the road from the Curtain. And we think by 1592, Shakespeare is involved in the company of actors that are based at the theatre in Shoreditch. And they are known at this time as the Queen's Men. So they're effectively sponsored by Queen Elizabeth I. We're not sure what Shakespeare was doing. I mean, possibly he kind of got a job as a hireling, so maybe he was almost like a trainee apprentice actor. Some people think that he used to hold the horses of people going to attend the performances at the theatre. So he was almost like a stagehand in a way. Yeah, like a kind of job boy kind of thing. But he's mentioned in 1592, and he's actually mentioned very unfavourably by a fellow writer called Robert Greene. And Robert Greene was on his deathbed at this point, so I think he was pretty bitter and angry, anyway. And he refers to Shakespeare as an upstart crow. It's a phrase we know, isn't it, now? Yes, well, it's a phrase. It's the title of this wonderful BBC TV series starring David Mitchell as Shakespeare, which I urge everyone to watch if they haven't seen it. And it's a wonderfully irreverent sort of look at, imagine to look at. It's sort of like Blackadder meets Shakespeare, really. Yeah, it's worth watching. Sounds great. I've never watched it, but I really should. Yeah. So he refers to this Shakespeare as an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers. And I guess what he's really saying is that this guy Shakespeare, who's obviously by this point established as a writer, hasn't been to university. So we know Shakespeare didn't go to university, but somehow he's still writing these plays, which obviously are doing quite well. And Robert Greene is pretty pissed off about this. Because I love that coming out. It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. So we think by that point he's certainly written, maybe 3 or 4 plays. Yeah. And one of the fun stories about Curtain as well is that it's a theatre that doesn't exist on the site anymore because Shakespeare and his troupe of actors actually moved it. Now, this is a story that some people think is apocryphal, but it did actually happen. He fell out, didn't he, with the man who owned the land. And so while this chap was away, they uprooted the whole theatre. They took it apart and moved it to the South Bank near where the Globe is today. That's right, yeah. So in the sort of the winter of 1598, the company of actors that were based at the theatre had now rebranded, by the way, and they were known as the Lord Chamberlain's Men. So the company of actors owned the building, but they didn't own the land, as you quite rightly say. The land is owned by this guy called Giles Allen. The lease has expired on the land, and he's not about to renew it. So they decide between Christmas and New Year, 1598, 1599, that in his absence, they're going to dismantle physical building. They're going to move it across the frozen River Thames, and presumably they had to haul it on sleds across the river.
Yeah,
the legend stated that they did it overnight. Well, obviously that was impossible, but they certainly did it over a few days, if not weeks.
Yeah.
They probably stored the timbers during the winter, possibly close to where Borough Market is today. And then we think by the spring, they found a location, which is now the site of the old Globe Theatre, and they rebuilt, and then they made it bigger. Yeah. And they rebranded this new building, the Globe, in 1599.
Yeah. I just love the idea of this guy who owns the land coming back and being like, what? No, there was a theatre here. I'm sure there was a theatre here. I love that idea of it kind of just disappearing. And
that's right. And actually, so the guy that had built the theatre was James Burbage. And Burbage had put in the original contract that although the land was owned by Giles Allen, the building belonged to the actors. And in fact, this guy, Giles Allen, tried to sue the Lord Chamberlain's men for about 3 years afterwards.
Wow.
But unsuccessly.
Too right. Their building. This is the Globe today. Now, this is not the original Globe. This was, so the original Globe burned down after, well, like everything in London, really. Stuff burns and we go, oh, that's crazy, and then build it again and it keeps burning. But the Globe Theatre burned down in the 1600s and wasn't replaced. But in the 1990s, this was the one that was built by Sam Wanamaker, who came over, a US actor, wasn't he, and theatre producer, I think. And he came over and found this, I mean, at the now incredible location right next to the river, and built a recreation of the Globe. This is what it looks like inside. If you've never been to the Globe Theatre, oh my goodness, it's stunning. You can either go for a show, which they do during the summer months, or you can go for a tour. And if you stand at the bottom, a groundling, which is like as it would have been in Shakespeare's time, you pay a very measly £5. And it is so much fun. They're streaming stuff online at the minute as well, I think. So it's worth checking them out because their productions are phenomenal.
Yes. So actually, as we're looking at this, it's worthwhile just, it's quite nice to sort of tell the story of what happened to the Globe. So in 1613, having stood for 14 years, and by the way, that's when Shakespeare was in his most creative period, really. And I guess it's the fact that he had this permanent, playhouse. So we get this amazing run of plays like Henry V was written in 1599, Julius Caesar was performed in 1599, Much Ado About Nothing, and then we get, Macbeth, and we get Othello, and we get King Lear, and we get Antony and Cleopatra. I mean, the really meaty, complex stuff all happens at the Globe. If you look at the triangular section up on the left-hand side of the photograph, that's like the sort of the roof of the stage. And in 1613, during a performance of King Henry VIII, which was one of Shakespeare's last plays, a cannon was fired, and the hot wadding from the cannon got stuck in the thatched roof of the theatre. You
can see kind of going around here. It's still thatched to this day.
Yes, that's right. So to all intents and purposes, the Globe that we see today is what we describe as our best guess. It's a faithful reconstruction based on archaeological evidence from the original site of the Globe, from written descriptions of the various playhouses, and the actual stage is taken from a sketch of a different playhouse called the Swan. So a combination of all those things has given us the Globe that we see today. Although it's really important to remember that the capacity of the Globe today is about 1,500 people. So you can have 700 people standing, as you quite rightly call them, groundlings, and about 900 people seated. But in Shakespeare's day, there would have been twice that many people in the same space.
Yeah.
3,000 people.
Just crammed in. It would have been crazy. Crazy.
And let's not forget, of course, that also every couple of years, there was an outbreak of a pandemic.
Fun. Topical.
Plague. And of course, the plague closed the theatres. And often the companies were forced to do what all actors hate doing, or many of them do, is touring.
Now, one thing's quite interesting. So if anyone saw the talks that we did quite a while ago now on the Great Fire of London with Laura Adams, after that huge fire, it was decreed that there would be no more thatched roofs in London because of the fire risk. So the Globe Theatre is the only, to my understanding, the only thatched roof in London. And whereas this is as faithful a recreation as humanly possible, if you look just up here, these little spikes at the top, these are sprinklers on the roof. That's pretty much the only 21st century addition, or 20th century addition when it was done, to what is essentially a medieval theatre. There's no sort of soundscaping. I mean, there's a bit of lighting, but not vast amounts. But yeah, this is our protection against anything happening again, and that was the kind of the condition that it was under, wasn't it?
That's right, and we have to remember, of course, it took years and years and years to get the Globe, the new Globe project off the ground. I mean, it took Sam Wanamaker his entire life to get the planning permission. He faced terrible opposition, and actually opposition came from lots of people in the business.
Really?
Yes, I mean, the fact that he was an American rebuilding Shakespeare's Globe.
American? How very...
Yeah. And they thought it was going to be like a Disneyland version of Shakespeare. Lots of very well-known actors really turned their noses up about the Globe.
And interesting you say that, because one person who, I mean, doesn't really turn his nose up so much, but has a bit of a theory on Shakespeare himself, is one of the UK's greatest Shakespearean actors, Mark Rylance, this is him in Wolf Hall, playing Thomas Cromwell, which is based on the Hilary Mantel books, and it's a phenomenal book and a phenomenal show. But he's known for doing all kinds of Shakespearean stuff. He was supposed to do the Tempest reading at the 2012 Olympics opening ceremony. They had a death in the family, so he couldn't do it. But he is one of our go-to guys for Shakespeare, and he doesn't buy into the fact that Shakespeare was who he was, does he?
That's right. Yes, he's one of a growing number of people that believe that Shakespeare did not write the plays. Mark Rylance was actually the first artistic director of the Globe Theatre, so he worked very closely with Sam Wanamaker on the whole project. It's what we call the anti-Stratford theory. So he believes that the plays were written by an aristocrat called the Earl of Oxford. And lots of other people, including Derek Jacobi, who's of course another one of our greatest Shakespearean actors, he also subscribes to this theory. And this whole anti-Stratford thing started way back, I think, as early as the 19th century. People started to question whether Shakespeare really wrote the plays.
Yeah, which I suppose is logical. The further you get from something historically, then doubt is going to creep in, and a little bit of sort of wondering whether the facts that we have are the real facts. But it's so interesting that he himself is a believer that Shakespeare was not quite the guy. Anyway, so before we finish, what I thought it'd be quite a good thing to do is to finish off by talking about a few places where you can see Shakespeare, or if you don't really like Shakespeare, or you don't really know how to find it a bit inaccessible. There are so many different ways to really kind of get stuck in and start your kind of Shakespearean journey, if you like. Now, one of the things I'm going to mention is that at the moment, the National Theatre on YouTube are showing Twelfth Night. This is, I just love this woman, Tamsin Greig, and she's playing Malvolio. They did a kind of gender-reversed version of Twelfth Night in two years ago, I think, 2017, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that is the National Theatre Live's offering for this week, so it'll be available till Thursday, I think. So definitely check that out. But Shakespeare has been done a whole variety of other ways, hasn't it? It's been kind of retooled a bit so that it doesn't have to be quite as weighty or as inaccessible as some people think.
That's right. So I mean, the reason Shakespeare is described as a genius is because his plays dealt with themes that, of course, are universal and that everyone can relate to. Love, anger, jealousy, betrayal, revenge. And he writes, of course, about all kinds of people, kings and queens and lawyers and doctors and, ordinary people. Yeah. He's been, of course, so many fantastic stage adaptations since Shakespeare's death. Yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You is...
great version.
Great version. You've got Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which I still think is one of the great...
just fabulous
modern film versions.
And whereas 10 Things I Hate About You is The Taming of the Shrew, but it's retooled so it is kind of modern language. This one they still use the original text, but oh my goodness, it's an absolute showcase. I mean, Baz Luhrmann is a showman anyway, but he has done a kind of it's phenomenal.
That's right, because actually it focuses on the gang warfare, which is really so much of what Romeo and Juliet is about. I mean, yes, it's a love story at the heart of it, but it's a lot about violence and gang warfare. Yeah.
Actually, Shakespeare Out Loud, Lauren is saying BBC iPlayer also showing the Royal Shakespeare Company and the Globe shows. So BBC iPlayer if you're in the UK.
Yes, and actually, just picking up on your friend Lauren's group, I mean, you know, a lot of people are put off by Shakespeare because they have to sort of study it at school and they have to write essays about Shakespeare. Shakespeare would have been absolutely, you know, agog that we were writing about the plays, writing essays. We have to just like read it out loud, and that's why your friend's group is fantastic. Because reading in a group and reading it out loud is the best way to really, you know, savor his language and just, you know, get to love it.
And I think with that group, you don't have to go along and read. You can go along and just watch and enjoy as well. So don't feel that if you don't want to kind of read the text out loud, you have to. It's great. So I'll have a look at that. Someone else has said, oh yeah, Lizzie Lockhart said, Much Ado About Nothing with Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson and The King are also excellent. Yeah.
Yes.
Really great.
And also, if you think about modern, you know, Netflix series, I'm thinking about something like House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. I mean, you know, that's really based on Richard III.
Yeah, it is,
you know, the whole struggle and that hunger for power and murdering people to get to the top of the tree. It's really based on Richard III.
Yeah, power grabs and all that kind of thing. Fabulous. Well, listen, thank you so much, Simon. What a pleasure to have you on again. Thank you for coming on and chatting.
It's always a delight to be on with you, Alex.
And thanks as well. You know, it's been nice to kind of delve into some bits that people might not know as much about, a bit of mystery, all the kind of little bits that people don't always see. Your family said it's lovely to see you. And I think
hi guys, great to see you. Thanks for tuning in again.
Said hi, Uncle Simon, earlier as well. So there we go.
And happy birthday to your mum and to William Shakespeare.
Yes, happy birthday to my mum, William Shakespeare. My mum's today. William Shakespeare was 2 days ago. What are we? Yeah, 2 days ago now. See if there's any questions. Oh, Gary, my lovely heckler who visited me yesterday, says, did Shakespeare have an exit through the gift shop? Yeah, absolutely, Gary. Oh, Hannah, who is in the film and theatre industry, says it's such a great building. I've been in a full fire drill while working there, and there's sprinklers all over that thatched roof now. So yeah, exactly. I don't know if there's any other questions. Having a quick speed through. So Shakespeare. Oh, we've got some of the trainee blue badge guides. He says Simon is our Shakespeare and Stratford guru on London training as well. Yes, he absolutely is. What Simon doesn't know about Shakespeare is not worth knowing. There we go. I think that is it. Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you so much. I am going to be back tomorrow. I know that wasn't the plan, but I am going to be back tomorrow with my lovely lockdown housemate, Becky, who you will love. And we're going to carry on our little story of the history of the churches in the City of London, from the Great Fire of London up to the modern day. It's going to be great. She's heckling me already, so it's going to be a fun one tomorrow. Thank you very much, Simon. I will see you all at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Happy weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.